What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I'm going to continue with my African American fight series with a fighter by the name of Lloyd Marshall. Now, Lloyd Marshall was a murderous row fighter that fought the who's who of boxing. A phenomenal fighter. And I want to take a look at his career. Now, Lloyd Marshall was born in Madison County, Georgia, on June 4th, 1914. Unfortunately, he passed away on August 4th, 1997. He fought out of Sacramento, California. He had total bouts of 99. He won 70, lost 25, and had 4 draws. He knocked out 36 of his opponents, and he was only stopped 11 times, considering the opponents that he did face. He had 738 rounds of experience. That's phenomenal. He fought under a middleweight and light heavyweight champion who was 5 foot and 10 inches. And like I said, he fought the who's who of boxing. Fought fighters such as Carl Bobo Olson. At the time, Carl Bobo Olson had a 69-3-5 record. That's phenomenal. Carl Bobo Olson was a middleweight champion. He became middleweight champion in 1953 when Sugar Ray Robinson relinquished his belt in 1952. Carl Bobo Olson had fought Sugar Ray Robinson about 3 times, lost all 3 times. But he became middleweight champion when he had an opportunity to face Randy Turpin. After Randy Turpin had lost to Sugar Ray Robinson in 1952, Randy Turpin was middleweight champion, and then got a rematch with Sugar Ray Robinson at the Polo Grounds and was knocked out. So Randy Turpin and Carl Bobo Olson fought for the title in 1953, and Carl Bobo Olson became middleweight champion of the world. Carl Bobo Olson also tried to get a light heavyweight championship away from Archie Moore. So Carl Bobo Olson, who was a phenomenal fighter, he lost 2 fights to an Australian fighter by the name of Davy Sands, but he was a phenomenal fighter. So that was an outstanding fight for Lloyd Marshall, although he lost to Carl Bobo Olson. He would face Seferino Garcia. Seferino Garcia was middleweight champion of the world after taking the title away from Ken Overland, 1940. Seferino Garcia fought Henry Armstrong several times. And that was a very good fight. I think at the time when he fought Lloyd Marshall, I'm going all this by memory. He fought Lloyd Marshall. I think he had a record of 106-25 and probably 12 or 11. And that was a phenomenal opportunity for Lloyd Marshall, although he lost to Seferino Garcia. He would fight Ken Overland. Ken Overland was a middleweight champion. Like I said, Seferino Garcia took the title away from Ken Overland. And at the time, I believe Ken Overland had a record of 83-14. And he defeated Ken Overland. 10 rounds. He would fight Bobby Zander. He would defeat him. Archie Moore. At the time, I think Archie Moore had a record of 70-6 or 70-9. He would lose to Archie Moore, but Archie Moore became light heavyweight champion after defeating Joey Maxim in 1952. He would fight Tommy Farr. Tommy Farr would fight Joe Louis in 1937. And he would go the distance with Joe Louis. Phenomenal. He would fight Jack Chase. Jack Chase was a murderous row fighter. I believe he had a record of 68-15 at the time. He would defeat Jack Chase. He would fight Anton Christofoli. Anton Christofoli was a light heavyweight champion. He would fight Joe Carter. He would fight Holman Williams twice. I believe Holman Williams had a record of like 118-19 and 118-18. He defeated him twice. Holman Williams was a murderous row fighter, and I have Holman Williams. He's my favorite murderous row fighter outside of Charlie Burley. He would face Curtis Shepard, another dynamic fighter. Curtis Shepard had a record, I believe, of 23-15 at the time. He would defeat him. He would fight Jimmy Bivens. Jimmy Bivens, I believe, had a record of 36-5 at the time. He would lose to Jimmy Bivens, but he would defeat Ezra Charles. He would defeat Eddie Booker. Eddie Booker was another murderous row fighter. Fascinating. He would fight Harry Kid Matthews. Harry Kid Matthews had never been stopped before he fought Rocky Marciano. Fascinating. He would fight Don Cockle, another Rocky Marciano opponent. He would fight Irish Bob Murphy. He was a light heavyweight contender. I believe he had a record of 28 or 38-2 at the time that he faced Lloyd Marshall. He would face Watson Jones. Watson Jones was a phenomenal fighter. Had a record of 44-26. Frankie Daniels. Amazing. Most impressive, he would face a fighter by the name Oakland Billy Smith. I'm going to show you Oakland Billy Smith because Oakland Billy Smith was phenomenal. Now this is Oakland Billy Smith. He fought between middleweight and light heavyweight. He was from Oakland, California. Oakland Billy Smith had the California light heavyweight championship strap, as you can see here. Now the reason why I'm showing you Oakland Billy Smith, I'm just choosing one opponent to show and prove something to you about boxing. Because I had this channel for some time now, and I don't know if I'm getting through to some of my viewers and subscribers of what boxing really is about. Now, Oakland Billy Smith, I'm just going off the top of my memory. I know he had 58 wins, 24 losses. I believe he had 4 draws, 33 knockouts, and I believe he was stopped 9 times. Okay? Now you're going to look at that record and say, okay, he had 58 wins and 24 losses. But I'm going to show you what boxing is about. Look at the fighters he fought. He fought Jack Chase, who was a murderous road fighter. Coco Kid, murderous road fighter. Aaron Wade, murderous road fighter. He fought Watson Jones. Charlie Cato, phenomenal fighter. Roy Miller. I mean, if you don't know who Roy Miller is, that was a heck of a fighter. He fought Archie Moore, Ezra Charles, Harold Johnson. Archie Moore was light heavyweight champion. Ezra Charles was a heavyweight champion. Harold Johnson was light heavyweight champion. Willie Beam, phenomenal fighter, was in there with Bob Bakers and Willie James. Johnny Holman, unbelievable. He was in there with Clarence Henry and Bob Baker and Elmer Ray, all of the great fighters. He fought Burt Littell. Burt Littell was a murderous road middleweight fighter. Fought Leonard Marrow, phenomenal fighter. Grant Butcher, just to name a few. Knockout artist Bob Satterfield. So when you see losses, you have to understand the quality of who the fighters lost to. So I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the fighters that Lloyd Marshall fought. And I thought that Oakland Billy Smith would be a good example. Let's get back to Lloyd Marshall's career. Now let's take a closer look at Lloyd Marshall. He was born Cleveland, Ohio, nationality American, Afro-American, light heavyweight, stood 5 foot 10 inches. Now he began his professional career in 1937 and was placed on a card on January 29th in Sacramento, and he earned a 6-round victory. He would fight that same opponent and knock him out in the second round on July 10th, 1937. On August 27, 1937, he would fight a fighter by the name of Joe Smallwood, San Francisco, California. He would knock him out in 7 rounds. October 27th, he would face Al Laboa, Oakland, California, knocking him out in 8 rounds. He would lose a fight on December 17th against Johnny Romeo. He would lose a fight against a fighter by the name of Johnny Romero, San Francisco, lose to him in 10 rounds. 1938, he would have a lot of knockouts. Charlie Killer Coates, he would defeat him in 10 rounds. Ken Overland, former middleweight champion, September 1st, San Francisco, he would defeat him in 10 rounds. Ben Valentine, November 18th, 1938, in New York City, he would defeat him in 6 rounds. He would have another knockout on December 14th a 5-round KO. 1939, February 22nd, he would face Seferino Garcia, who was a former middleweight champion. San Francisco, he would lose to him in 10 rounds. But on March 17th, 1939, he would face Seferino Garcia once again. In San Francisco, he would be stopped in 5 rounds. May 17th, Eddie Babe Risco. He was a state middleweight champion. San Francisco, he would knock him out in 5 rounds. June 8th, Jack Hibbard, Reno, Nevada. He would knock him out in 3 rounds. June 23rd, Harold Dittman. These are outstanding fighters. Sacramento, California. He would knock him out in 8 rounds. September 29th, Teddy Uros. San Francisco, California. He would defeat him in 10 rounds. Teddy Uros would be champion. December 6th, Lou Bullard. Oakland, California. He would defeat him in 10 rounds. Lou Bullard would be champion. These are all champions that he defeated at one time in their career. 1940, March 29th, Red Lewis, Boston, Massachusetts. He would knock him out in 3 rounds. May 3rd, George Gano, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He would knock him out in 2 rounds. May 21st, Tony Sisco, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He would have a 10-round draw. And on June 13th, he would face Tony Sisco again in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he would have a 12-round victory. October 21st, Teddy Uros, once again. He would be a middleweight champion. He would face him in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and lose to him in 10 rounds. 1941. He would lose 1 fight that year to Shorty Hughes. February 7th, 1941, Sacramento, California. He would lose to him in 10 rounds. But he would also fight Ralph DeJohn. San Francisco, he knocked him out in 6 rounds. Ralph DeJohn was related to Joey DeJohn. Carmen Basilia would be related to that family as far as management was concerned. 1942, February 27th, Eddie Pierce, Sacramento, California, defeated him in 8 rounds. Newsboy Mitchell. Now look at all of the fighters he fought. Eddie Booker, he would lose to him in 10 rounds. Murderous Row fighter, September 28th, 1942, in San Francisco, California. Harvey Macy, Sacramento, knock him out in 10 rounds. Charlie Burley, December 13th, 1942, another Murderous Row fighter. Los Angeles, California, he would defeat Charlie Burley. Charlie Burley was a phenomenal fighter. He didn't get an opportunity against Sugar Ray Robinson. At one time, Holman Williams and Charlie Burley was ranked number 1 and number 2. They never got their shot. That was Marcel Sedan, 1949. Marcel Sedan wound up giving Jake LaMotta an opportunity. And he was also ranked around that number 2 and number 1 slot, Charlie Burley. 47. But instead, Tony Zell fought I'm just scrolling here. He would fight Rocky Graziano instead of Charlie Burley. 1943, January 12th, Harvey Macy, Stockton, California, defeated him in 10 rounds. He would face Harvey Macy again, March 12th, Stockton, knocking him out in 8 rounds. He would face Ezzard Charles, March 31st, 1943, in Cleveland, Ohio, KOing him in 8 rounds. Anton Cristofoli, Cleveland, Ohio. He would defeat him in 10 rounds on April 22nd, 1943. Look at this schedule. Look at this year. June 8th, after Anton Cristofoli, he would face Jimmy Bivens, another black Murderous Row fighter. Cleveland, Ohio, knocking him out. Well, he would stop himself in 13, excuse me. July 21st, Curtis Shepard, Cleveland. He would defeat him in 10 rounds. August 20th, Wild Bill McDowell, Akron, Ohio. He would knock him out in 6 rounds. November 8th, Jack Chase, San Francisco, 15-round draw. December 3rd, Bobby Berger, Sacramento, knock him out in 4 rounds. December 13th, Jack Chase, San Francisco. He would lose to him in 15 rounds. 1944, Nate Bolden, Cleveland, Ohio, would defeat him in 10 rounds on January 18th. February 16th, 1944, Bob Gardner, another good fighter, Milwaukee, knocking him out in 1 round. He would face Joe Carter in Baltimore, Maryland, and defeat him in 10 rounds on March 6. He would face Jake LaMotta, 1944, April 21st in Cleveland, Ohio, and defeat him in 10 rounds. Jake LaMotta would be middleweight champion. Joe Riddick, Milwaukee, defeat him in 10 rounds on May 19th. He would face Holman Williams twice, June 7th and July 11th. Once in Oakland, California, defeating him in 10 rounds, and once in Washington, D.C. He lost to him in 10 rounds. He would face former light heavyweight champion. At the time, he wasn't a light heavyweight champion yet, Joey Maxim, July 27th, Cleveland, Ohio. He would defeat him in 10 rounds. Joey Maxim would become light heavyweight champion after beating Freddie Mills in London. And Archie Moore would take the title away from Joey Maxim. 1952, Joey Maxim would face Sugar Ray Robinson. And for 14 rounds, Robinson was winning the fight, and the heat got to Ray Robinson, and Robinson couldn't continue. And that's when Robinson retired. But then he made a comeback in 1943. October 18th, Joe Carter, Cleveland, Ohio, defeated him in 10 rounds. I want to give you an overview of some of the fighters that this magnificent fighter fought. This is one of my boxing programs that I have, Referee in Redhead. You can see here June 10th, 1944, Lloyd Marshall. He was on the Oakland card. He was going to fight Oakland Billy Smith. But he was knocked out by Oakland Billy Smith in the ninth round. And I showed you Oakland Billy Smith. Oakland Billy Smith was a phenomenal fighter. So salute to Lloyd Marshall. He is entered in my Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. He fought the who's who of boxing. And this is what I'm talking about when I talk about great fighters. Lloyd Marshall had a record of 99 total fights, like I told you. He won 70 and lost 25. But when you look at the 25 losses, and you take a guy today who has no losses, or 2 losses, look at the quality of fighters he fought, and look at the quality of the fighters of the guys that I'm showing you fought. And then look at their records. I showed you Oakland Billy Smith's record. The murderous row fighters he fought. Former champions he fought. That's what boxing is all about. Salute to these fighters. This is Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Salute to my subscribers. Salute to Lloyd Marshall. I will continue my African American fight series. Peace.